Well. The Six Nations is back this weekend, and it kicks off Friday night, tomorrow night. Much like the World Cup, it kicked off on a Friday night in France, and it's going to do exactly the same again. I can't wait for this one. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Six Nations 2024. Six Nations is always, I guess, the best time of the year. If it's any different for you guys, then let me know down in the comments. But yeah, Six Nations for me is definitely the best time of year. Probably because it's all cold and winter, and then we get the Six Nations to brighten up our days. All the teams are officially out, so I would recommend going to the Six Nations Instagram channel. They're all on there, so once you're picking your teams, it'll be much easier to see who's starting and who's not. But this year they do also have like green flags and orange flags, depending on if you're starting or if you're on the bench, or a red flag if you're not even playing. So that's useful. You can probably do it all out of the app, to be fair. If you're new around here, then subscribe to the channel. Also, if you like the video, drop a like and leave a comment. But if you are accustomed to the channel and been here before, you'll know that this team selection video is probably what most of you look forward to most of the week, and it's definitely the same for me. So let's get straight into it. What you guys have been waiting for. In the front row, I've gone with Andrew Porter, Peter Malvaca and Pierre Schoeman. So fresh off his stardom in the Netflix documentary, Andrew Porter is starting for Ireland. Reason why I've picked him, he's just a really solid ball carrier, scrummages actually really well as well. I think probably for Ireland, Ireland versus France, it's going to be such a dominant up-front battle, and no one's more up-front in that Irish team than Andrew Porter. Also scored a few tries last Six Nations, as we saw in the documentary, if you've seen it. Loves a carry, so I think he's going to get you lots of points, especially for a prop. And I do believe he'll stay on for probably over 65 minutes, so we'll get us some good points that way as well. Next up is Peter Malvaca. This one was a tough one, to be honest, because the hooker position does usually get quite good points. And someone he's facing against, Dan Sheehan, is actually pretty good for getting points, especially in fantasy, both with the Six Nations last year and the World Cup. But I think with it being in France and probably Sexton leaving, I'm swaying more towards a France win in this one. I do think Malvaca, again, like Andrew Porter, is one of their key ball carriers for France. He's so dynamic as well. He's not just powerful, but also really fast, and does like to sit in those wider channels, so can pick up assists, even tries as well. And finally, I've gone with Pierre Schoeman. So this front row is essentially probably all really strong ball carriers, and probably some of the strongest for their team, and Schoeman's no different. I think Scotland are going to come with a pretty physical mindset to Wales. I think they'll try and dominate them up front to then allow their backs to absolutely shine, and we know they can, especially with Finn Russell. But the hard work will have to be done up front first, and looking at that Welsh pack, especially the front row, I think Schoeman can definitely have an impact there. In the second row, I've gone for England's Ollie Chessum and also Joe McCarthy. So, reason for picking Chessum, he had a really decent World Cup actually. If you picked him in fantasy, he did pick up some good points, scored a few tries as well. He does like a decent run. He's not, I guess, England's most strongest ball carrier, but you do see him carry the ball quite a lot. He'll probably make, especially against Italy, probably over 10 carries. Similar to like Malvaca, he does like to sit in the wider channels, so we'll also get maybe good points for meters made as well. And who knows, might even get a try against Italy. McCarthy is exactly the same as Porter in the sense that I expect a pretty physical battle from Ireland, and McCarthy will definitely bring that. I think he's like 6'6", a total brute, so much like Tyke Byrne, he's going to bring the physicality. However, budget in this situation did make me pick McCarthy instead of Byrne, but I think McCarthy will probably offer that edge in terms of tackling and physicality, whereas Byrne is more over the ball and slick with his hands, but also physical as well. In the back row, I've gone for the three most expensive players in fantasy, with Ben Earl, Caelan Doris and Greg Aldridge. So first up, Ben Earl. Well, we all know what he can do for England. Don Brandt is not starting at 8, it is Ben Earl. So I think that just shows you how much Steve Borthwick values Ben Earl. He's definitely probably the best player, right, for England in the World Cup especially, maybe apart from Farrell. But at the moment, Ben Earl is on form. Hopefully he can carry that from the World Cup with his England form, but also for Saracens, been performing pretty well. He'll just carry the ball all day, probably won't get taken off, so 80 minutes against Italy might be pretty good. Maybe rotated for Cunningham South, as a bit of a tongue twister. But I doubt it. I think it'll probably be more likely Ethan Roots to go off on his debut. Caitlin Doris, well, there's not much has to be said about him. I think he was nominated for World Player of the Year, so really, really decent player. And again, that French and Irish battle up front is going to be really physical. Caitlin Doris is Ireland's main ball carrier, so we'll continue to bash down that French defence. I do expect France to have probably a lot more of the ball, maybe not a lot, but more of the ball than Ireland. So he'll have to come in clutch in defence as well, but we know he can do that, especially with Van der Fleer. Those two go hunting for turnovers like no back row in the world. So I'm pretty confident in Caitlin Doris, and he'll probably be a mainstay for the rest of the tournament, to be fair. Talking about mainstays in my team is Greg Aldridge. So newly named French captain after Dupont is obviously with Sevens now. I think Greg Aldridge will play 80 minutes in this one. Does tend to get rotated, maybe like in games like Italy, Wales, etc. But I do believe he'll play 80 minutes this one. And much like Doris, is France's out-and-out ball carrier. He's their number 8, so that's all he's going to do all day. Again, does get turnovers and does make a lot of tackles, so physical. If France do have a lot of the ball, he's going to get his hands on it. Well, they need him to get his hands on it for them to win the game. So I'm pretty confident in Greg Aldridge as a pick here. In the halfbacks, I've gone with Alex Mitchell and Finn Russell. So Alex Mitchell as 9 was probably the safest pick, I'd say. If you're looking for, well, another safe pick, I'd probably say like Gibson Park. It's probably pretty decent. Again, going to play really well, get his hands on the ball, and also the way Ireland play, he's more likely to pick up assists and maybe even tries. But I think that's also the same for Mitchell. The way he plays for Northampton, he gets tries probably every week or every other week even. So if England do want to play, and they should do against Italy, then Mitchell will be key to that. Not just fizzing the ball from the base of the ruck, but also getting on the end of like try assists and also tries as well back inside. So I think Mitchell is a pretty decent pick, especially against Italy. Then at 10, we've gone for Finn Russell. So I did have Marcus Smith in mind, especially against Italy, but he's obviously injured. George Ford is starting. Finn Russell has been named captain against Wales for Scotland, so I think it's a no-brainer. If Scotland are to turn it on, which I do hope they do and probably think they will, especially against a weakened young Wales team, I think that Finn Russell is going to be, well, a decent option. Only downside is he's really expensive, so you have to kind of put budget elsewhere, but I think he's definitely going to be worth it. Lots of assists, hopefully he kicks his goals as well. The way Scotland play is free-flowing, so he's definitely got to be a man. Now, in the centres, like I was saying, I had to get budget elsewhere. I'm happy with the centre picks. I've gone with Bundy Aki and Fraser Dingwall. First off is Bundy Aki, and if anyone watched the World Cup, then he absolutely tore up. Although they got knocked out in the quarter-final, he's probably, well, maybe centre of the tournament. Also, if he played fantasy in the World Cup, he scored a ridiculous amount of points. I think he scored like 70 points in over 2 or 3 games as well. So he's really key. And if Ireland are to get their hands on the ball, they're going to have to get it in Bundy Aki's hands. That battle against him and Dante is going to be interesting. I think Dante might just edge it, but that's because of the French team and being home. But I do think Bundy Aki is going to rack up some good points. He's going to have to get the ball off first phase and get over that gain line for Ireland to have any chance, which I think he'll do. Fraser Dingwall, I say on the other hand, might be a little bit different in terms of play style, but he is starting at 12 for England. I do think it's an interesting combination, Fraser Dingwall and Henry Slade, but the way he's been playing at Northampton, there's no reason why he shouldn't be picked, especially for 8 stars, which is absolutely nuts. If anyone has been following the Premiership with Northampton, they've been absolutely flying. I think Fraser Dingwall is definitely underrated. I think he's even captained Northampton as well this season, which is pretty crazy, especially for how young he is. If he can cement the 12th position, not saying that he necessarily will, especially with Ollie Lawrence coming back, but I do expect him to have a decent game. And look, he is 8 stars, so absolutely cheap pick. So in the back 3, I've gone all out really and spent probably the majority of my budget. Damien Penaud is in, why would he not be? Duhan van der Merwe is my captain for this game as well, interestingly enough. And then I've also gone with Thomas Ramos for France. Starting off with Penaud, don't really need to say too much about him. Top try scorer in the World Cup, I'm pretty sure, but also last Six Nations, and also in Europe at the moment, so he scores tries for fun. Only reason why I haven't captained him is because he's playing against Ireland, and I think it'll be a decent game for sure. It's definitely going to be tight, but I don't know if it's going to be like a 30 point each. It just is a bit hard to tell at the moment. I think Van der Merwe is a safer captain option with the weaker fixture. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Am I missing a trick not captaining Penaud, as he's just the obvious option? Then with Van der Merwe, of course I've captained him. He is playing Wales, and it is a pretty strong Scottish team, to be fair. They've got Carl Rowe at 15, which is the only, I guess, omission, Blair Kinghorn. But other than that, that Scottish team is pretty decent. And if I were Wales, I wouldn't want to be defending Van der Merwe. I think reason for captaining him is a weaker fixture against Wales than France versus Ireland is. It is away for them though, it's at the Principality, so is that going to play a factor? I'm not sure, but I think if Scotland can get Van der Merwe into the game, which they need to, then I think he's going to cause havoc, especially against a somewhat inexperienced Welsh side. And then lastly, we've got Thomas Ramos. Mr. Consistent, to be fair, for France. Also kicks goals and plays fullback, so I think he's a no-brainer for our teams. Him and Penaud are definitely, well, maybe cemented for the whole Six Nations. Penaud is definitely, Ramos maybe less so. But he's a fullback, gets good runner meters, and also kicks goals, which is going to get good points as well. Again, it is going to be a tight game between the two of them, so I think his kicking is going to be important, and his accuracy is really decent as well. And then finally, probably the hardest pick to choose from, probably because you can choose from so many, is the super sub. I have gone with Jack Dempsey, which he wasn't in my original super sub video because I would have just presumed he would be starting at 8. They have put Matt Fagerson there, who is an 8 by trade, but he has been playing 6 for them. I think probably with some of the changes in the back row, like no Rory Darge for example, they have just gone with Fagerson at 8. But I think Jack Dempsey is one of Scotland's best ball carriers, and with him on the bench, I just can't miss. I think he definitely deserves to start, so that's why I've gone for him. Other omissions I have and was thinking about was definitely Jack Conan for Ireland, but swayed against that because I do think France are probably going to pip it, and also that England sub bench looks pretty good. Cunningham South might be a decent option because he'll just want to get the ball in his hands, as he does exactly for Quins. Also Faye Boso is pretty nice as well, but I guess more of a risk with England. So that is my starting team for the first round of the Six Nations. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and whether, well, 1, captain pick is right. 2, is my super sub a decent option? There are just so many options that I could choose from. But also, have I left anyone out? So let me know down in the comments. Subscribe as always, because this is going to be running out throughout the Six Nations. And I hope you all enjoyed the video. Always want to know your teams down below as well. But thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.